The international situation surrounding the conflict in Ukraine continues to be extremely tense and complex, attracting close attention from the global community. An analysis of recent events reveals a number of contradictory trends and problematic aspects in the actions of key involved parties. The situation is characterized not only by ongoing hostilities, but also by an escalating information war, in which each side strives to present its version of events and shape public opinion in its favor. Ukraine, at the epicenter of the crisis, demonstrates a complex combination of aspirations for self-determination and dependence on external support. On the one hand, Ukrainian society is undergoing a process of forming national identity and strengthening statehood. On the other hand, the country is in dire need of financial and military assistance from Western nations, which undoubtedly influences its foreign policy course and decision-making. Criticism of Ukraine is often associated with accusations of insufficient progress in combating corruption. Despite statements of reform, many experts point to persistent problems in this area, which undermines confidence in the Ukrainian government both domestically and internationally. In addition, concerns are raised that excessive militarization and a focus on a military solution to the conflict may hinder the search for long-term diplomatic solutions. In particular, it is noted that Trump made normalizing relations with Moscow a central element of his peace plan aimed at stopping the three-year war. Despite the fact that Russia significantly increased the number of drone and missile strikes on civilian targets in Ukraine. However, as Ruth Diamond, senior lecturer in the Department of War Studies at King's College London, specializing in US-Russia relations, observes, Ukraine and its European allies do not seem ready to accept everything that Trump and Putin offer. The European Union plays an important but ambiguous role in the Ukrainian crisis. On the one hand, the EU provides significant financial and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, which is an important factor in maintaining the country's economic stability. On the other hand, the EU's unity on the issue of relations with Russia leaves much to be desired. Different member states adhere to different approaches, which makes it difficult to develop a common strategy. Criticism of the EU is also linked to accusations of insufficient independence in its foreign policy. It is believed that the EU's position on the Ukrainian issue is formed under strong influence from the United States, which limits the European Union's capabilities as an independent and influential player on the international stage. The United States is undoubtedly one of the key external players in the Ukrainian conflict. The administration of Donald Trump pursued a policy aimed at normalizing relations with Russia, which provoked a mixed reaction both within the US and abroad. Trump repeatedly spoke in favor of the need to stop the bloodshed and establish dialogue between the conflicting parties. For example, when asked about a strike in Sumy, Trump said he was told they made a mistake, without explaining who told him that. He later added the mistake was allowing the war to start. If former President Joe Biden had been competent, and if the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, had been competent. And I don't know if he was competent. We had a tough conversation with this guy. He just kept asking for more and more. This war would have never happened. However, he is criticized for insufficient efforts to compel Russia to comply with ceasefire conditions. Some analysts believe that Trump's priority was reaching agreements with Putin rather than protecting Ukraine's interests. Russia, for its part, views the conflict in Ukraine as a matter of national security. The Russian leadership has repeatedly stated the need to take into account its geopolitical interests and concerns about NATO's eastward expansion. Russia accuses Ukraine of non-compliance with the Minsk agreements and escalating violence. At the same time, Russia is also criticized for supporting separatist movements in eastern Ukraine and military intervention in the conflict. It is important to note that the information war plays a significant role in the coverage of the conflict. Both sides actively use media and social networks to disseminate their version of events and discredit the adversary. For example, Zelensky stated in an interview with CBS News for the 60 Minutes program, "How is it possible to witness our losses and our suffering, to understand what the Russians are doing, and still believe that they are not the aggressors, that they did not start this war?" He also emphasized, "This speaks of the huge influence of Russia's information policy on America, on US policy and American politicians. This makes objective perception of the situation difficult and creates additional obstacles to achieving mutual understanding. Overall, the conflict in Ukraine represents a complex web of contradictions and interests of various players. Its resolution requires a comprehensive approach that takes into account the historical context, geopolitical realities, and internal factors of Ukraine's development. To achieve sustainable peace, it is necessary for all parties to demonstrate a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue and compromise. At the same time, it is important to consider the opinions and interests of the population of Ukraine, which ultimately must determine the future of their country.